America Weekend. I'm Sarah Williamson.
And I'm Tom Borelli, in for Michael Grimm is taking well-deserved vacation. It's Sunday, August 18th. Here's some of the stories that we're following just for you.
Months after the shameful attack by a terrorist group, Hamas, on Israel, there are increasing pressure on the Jewish state to negotiate a ceasefire. But why are people forgetting that the cowardly sneak attack by a terrorist on October 7th was what started this all? We'll break that down.
Plus, is the establishment media taking a back seat to social media influencers at this year's Democrat National Convention? What the move says about the party's priorities and their chances in November.
And Kamala Harris may be distancing herself from her former boss, but she seems to be embracing his old boss's playbook. Will joy have the same impact as hope and change? We'll bring that and the King's Table, and a lot more to the King's Table with former Congressman Peter King and Jack Kingston. But first, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tomorrow as Israel heads to the negotiating table yet again in an attempt to secure a ceasefire agreement with Hamas.
This comes as the IDF continues to strike terrorist locations in Gaza, as well as combat hellfire from Hezbollah in the north. Joining us now is the former Israeli ambassador and senior faculty member at the Tel Aviv University, Ido Aharoni. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Sarah, for inviting me. Last time I saw you was in the streets of Tel Aviv right after the attack started in October.
It was, and it's such a pleasant surprise to have you joining us here now. Thank you very much. Hopefully next time as well, if you don't come on again, I get to see you in Tel Aviv when I'm there next. But look, Ambassador, these will be the first negotiations really for Yahya Sinwar as being in charge of the political bureau now. Do you think this is going to have any change on what we're going to see?
No, I think that that from the get-go, Sinwar was the guy who was calling the shots. I think that we're facing a very difficult situation because of the linkage that was created. 10/7 was a manifestation of the anti-American axis. In order for the United States to consolidate the counter-axis, meaning Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Israel, and so on, they need a hostage deal and they need a ceasefire. The problem is that Hamas has no incentive to release the hostages. They want the war to end, but they don't want to release the hostages because that would mean that Israel would understand that they lost their only leverage they had.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Ambassador, Israelis are not happy with the war at this point. There was a massive protest overnight in Tel Aviv against the Prime Minister Netanyahu. These protests seem to me are getting bigger and bigger. The question is, will public discontent push Netanyahu government to open more of a compromise and push them more to a peace deal?
Well, nobody's talking about a peace deal. Nobody's talking about a two-state solution. I think many Israelis are dissatisfied with the way their government has handled the situation even before 10/7. And that happens in democracies. And in fact, it's a sign actually to the health. It's a credit to the health and the resilience of Israeli democracy. I don't think it will affect the deal. As I said before, the key is Hamas. Look, if Hamas wanted to end this war, all they had to do is drop their weapons and leave Gaza. What Israel wants is to end the rule of Hamas in Gaza. Hamas is a deadly jihadist Islamist organization, anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-Western. That's what we want. And most Israelis support this overarching goal of the war, but they also want to see the hostages back. Hamas, on its end, has no reason to give up the only leverage they have.
Exactly. And look, one thing that I love about Israel is their ability to go out and express how they really feel about any situation. And these protests have been happening since the beginning of the war. We saw the camps for the with the hostage families outside the Kiryat, but now we're seeing thousands and thousands on the street. It's almost like back when before the war happened, when they were protesting the Supreme Court, that sort of size. But is it Bibi that they are going to have to change at the end of this? Or we know that Hamas is holding them for a reason, right? We know that. Is there going to be any move that Bibi can make in order to help to sort of please the Israelis? Because we all know it's Hamas, but if they're not going to give, what can Israel give?
Right. So the devil is always in the details. The question is, what kind of ceasefire is going to be achieved? This is going to be a temporary ceasefire, which would mean that Israel could go back and complete the military war and achieve the military goals, or is it going to be a permanent ceasefire, which would mean that Israel will have a very, very difficult time to resume the war against Hamas? This, our viewers and our listeners must understand. What Hamas did on 10/7 changed Israeli society to the core. Israel cannot live like this anymore with enemies on the southern border, enemies on the northern border, heavily armed, ready to destroy our lives and ready to kill Israeli civilians. So most Israelis get that. Most Israelis don't want that to continue. And the question is, what kind of agreement will be achieved in the end? Because the effort to uproot Hamas, to end Hamas rule may take years. This is not something that will happen overnight. And I think most Israelis understand that.
Yeah. The thing is, it's always been the case is that Israel's the only mature person in the room in that region, and they're always the one that have to make the sacrifices in order to keep things stable, unfortunately. But former Ambassador Ido Aharoni, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Hip with the kids. Okay, that's what the Harris-Waltz campaign, they're very hip. They're all over TikTok. And that's what they've been doing since they launched this campaign for the Democratic Party. And they've been courting influencers and A-list celebrities for their political rallies and appearances. Their events sometimes look like a pop concert or